They're typically French. I mean, Hardinonic is probably the best number 8 in the world, even though I believe he's slightly injured. Yash Valley at scrum half, then the commander-in-chief, the guy who pulls the strings. Like, I mean, they have talent, but they're in the middle of the French league overall. They're not going to qualify for the top 4, so all their resources are aimed towards the Heineken Cup, so this is a biggie for them. And to beat a French team on French soil, no matter where they are in their own league, is a very difficult ask. Biarritz are probably flakier than, say, the likes of Clermont or Toulon or Toulouse, but on home turf they still have it within their armoury to turn this Munster team over, although I don't think it's a much more difficult task for Leinster going to Toulouse than it is for Munster going to Biarritz. But again, I'd be worried about which Munster team turns up. If it's the Munster team that turned up yesterday, then Biarritz will win in a canter.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well they could be missing Harry Nordicky next weekend, Moss. He was absolutely excellent for France in the Six Nations. He's a brilliant number 8. How much of a loss would he be?
Incalculable, because himself and Yash Valley have a telepathy there at 8 and 9. They kind of pull all the strings, they make all the decisions for the team. He's their main decision maker, and Munster would fear him. And Wallace and Quinlan, like they know him well, but I mean he has outplayed them on the last couple of occasions. So I'd be a great boost for Munster if he didn't play. But having said that, they have other fellas to slot in. They've nearly a team of internationals, So, but he would be an incalculable loss, certainly.
Now, on the flip side, Munster could very well be without Paul O'Connell as well. In fairness to Mick O'Driscoll, he's been very good in recent weeks in O'Connell's absence. But going down there to play Biarritz, you're going to need a guy like Paul O'Connell.
You do. You see, Mick O'Driscoll is probably as good a player as Paul O'Connell, it must be said. He's very good in the line-out. We saw some of his brilliant line-out takes yesterday evening. He's great at carrying the ball. He's probably even better at carrying the ball than O'Connell. But at the end of the day, O'Connell is the talisman of that Munster team. Like, he's a talismanic character when he goes onto the field. It's players follow him, So O'Connell's loss is more to do with what he elicits from the players around him than what he actually does himself. So in that sense, he is an incalculable loss, although Mick O'Driscoll has filled in well. I just hope O'Connell gets back soon. He's got this chronic groin injury, which is a thing that can last for a long time or it can go away pretty quickly. It's quite an extraordinary and irritating injury. So I hope he comes right. But if he does come right, then maybe there's only 60 minutes in him because he hasn't played for quite some time.
Yeah, no, San Sebastian is effectively, it's a second home for Biarritz. It's a place they play it quite often. At the same time, Munster won't fare going down there. I mean, having gone to Biarritz earlier in the season and put 4 tries on them, they certainly won't fare going to San Sebastian.
No, I mean, they've been there before, which is, great. And the Munster supporters, even though there's recessionary times here, they'll rally and organise a few quid for that trip, because it's a beautiful part of northern Spain. And there's a great sense of romance about going there and all that. So we won't be found wanting on the sidelines, that's for sure. And given the familiarity that Irish provincial sides have had with French teams over the years and the amount of times that they've visited the south of France, then the sort of aura of going there isn't as intense as it used to be long ago when we weren't used to doing it. So I don't think San Sebastian will hold as much fear as it used to for Irish teams, because we've won in the south of France a good few times latterly.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting as well to see Tony McGahan's team selection during the week, Moss. Obviously, O'Connell is a doubt, as we said. Keith Earls, Doug Howlett and Ian Dolan carry Knox as well at the moment. Lefemi Maffey did very well on the wing last night, I thought, against the Ospreys. Do you think he could be an option on the wing next week?
Possibly, but I wouldn't be a great fan of his, which I think he does an awful lot of huffing and puffing, but never blows anybody's house down. He's inclined to do all his running, and he doesn't penetrate. He doesn't sort of get through the gain line that often, even though he did play well last night. I think Ian O'Dowling is a very integral part of that Munster backline. He's a lovely, busy player, and I think it's very important that he plays. And then, most importantly of all, Earls, who is he's the legs of the backline. From broken play, he's incredible. He can get across the advantage line. He can sidestep off either foot. He seems to be the only fellow with real pace that we have in the Munster backline, and it's imperative that he plays, because he's really where our thrust and attack will come from.
Yeah, and the wing could be a crucial area as well next week, Moss, because Biarritz have got this American winger in Gwenya. He's probably the fastest player in world rugby. He left Habana for dead back at the 2007 World Cup. Is he a guy you'd have fancied coming up against in your own career?
Not really. You'd have to stand up on top of him or do a Trevor England on it and take his head off after about 2 minutes, because if you gave him space, he'd burn you, But I remember Trevor England was always that. He said any of these fast jiggy kind of fellas like Ringland would stand up on them so that they'd never get space. He'd nearly be watching him coming out the tunnel in case the fecker would get roomed, you know what I mean? So That's what I would try and do with him, because if he gets ball in space with a run at you, he's going to burn everybody. But hopefully Munster are around long enough to sort of be cute about that and not give this guy any room.
Yeah, just going to talk briefly about Leinster as well, Moss. They face a massive test away to Toulouse on Saturday. They might have to do it as well without Johnny Sexton. On paper, Toulouse look absolutely sensational. How do you see that game going?
Well, Toulouse have a team of internationals, I mean, they're odds-on favourites to win the Heineken Cup, particularly given the fact that the final is in Paris. Leinster, on the other side of the coin, are probably the most complete team at their best in Europe. I mean, the Heineken Cup duet there against the Scarlets at the end of October, they gave a performance in the Parky Scarlet for an hour in the first match that was as good as I've seen from any club side in the world. It was like Barcelona against Arsenal for that hour in the first leg in Arsenal in the Emirates. So when Leinster play well, they are absolutely sublime. Unfortunately, since then they have lost a bit of form. They had a very flaky performance against Connacht, with their big guns out. So I'm just hoping that they had their eye off the ball and that they'll have it really on the ball next Saturday. It's a 50-50 match. Toulouse will start favourites, but Leinster have a fantastic defence with Kurt McQuilkin, and they're very, very hard to beat.
Yeah, I know, if both Munster and Leinster can win next weekend, Moss, what an occasion it would be to have an All-Ireland Heineken Cup final at the Stade de France.
It would be absolutely fantastic. I mean, last year in Croke Park, the 80,000 or the 100,000 people that travelled trying to get into that match, there was 10 or 20,000 locked out outside. That was one of the greatest occasions in Irish rugby. There was one thing wrong: Leinster won it. So hopefully we can go to Paris and put one back over on them this time, because a second defeat from them in the Heineken Cup would be just untenable. We'd never be able to live with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally, Moss, before you let you go, how do you see it finishing between Munster and Biarritz? Can Munster do it?
I think Munster will win if O'Connell and Earls plays. If they don't, I'd be very, very apprehensive.